Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Matthew Podgorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute. And this afternoon, I am answering your questions live on the spot right now. And today about parenting during coronavirus. And today's topic is how do we help out children in the grade ranges of kindergarten to second grade? How do we support their remote learning during this time? And so we're here to answer your questions about parenting during coronavirus, and specifically if you have any questions about how do children in grades K through 2 learn and how do we support them during remote learning, we're here to answer your questions about that. So please leave your questions in the comment section. Keep your questions coming. We're going to answer them as they come out. And so I'm answering them live right now. So if you have anything that you want to know about this topic or just general questions about remote learning and how to support kids right now, please feel free to leave your questions in the comments and we'll definitely get to them. So I'm going to start off with just giving a brief introduction and overview of sort of the expectations of kids in grades kindergarten through second grade and how these kids learn. And so what we know about kids in this grade range is that they are really actually awesome learners. So kids in this grade range learn really well from verbal instruction that also gets paired with some interesting visual stimuli. And that really helps children learn and retain new information when we pair verbal instruction with some engaging visuals. So generally speaking, what we know about kids in kindergarten through second grade and what academic skill development looks like, what we know is that it involves a lot of exposure to new material, a lot of repeated and consistent practice of new skills so that those skills can become reinforced, a lot of explicit direction about how to use those new skills and how to apply them. And kids in this grade range need a little bit more guidance on the application of what they're learning. And we also know that kids in this grade range do really, really well when they get feedback about their performance and their behavior and how they're doing. And they often look to the adults in their lives, both parents and teachers, for feedback on how they're doing. And what we also know is important for kids in this grade range is that they need lots of praise. So when you see that your child is doing something that you want them to do and you see that they're able to accomplish things independently or even with your support and guidance and it's what you expect them to do, please don't forget to give them a lot of good praise. And you can be very specific about that praise. You know, everything from, wow, I love how you were able to put together that puzzle. Great job getting started on your homework or your reading assignment. I love how quickly you got through that while also putting in good effort and reading through everything. So giving lots of praise and making sure it's specific and labeled is a really great tool to actually reinforce learning at this age range. We also know children at this age range really learn through being provided tools for solving problems. And they're also very highly attuned to the social environment, what's happening around them. So developmentally, we know that kids in this grade range, and these children from kindergarten to second grade, we're thinking around the ages of 5 years old till about 7 years old, they're really picking up cues from their environment, and they're learning a lot by observing what's going on around them and also from what people are telling them and from the messages. And it's not just from the adults, but also their peers as well. It's important to note actually right now that, of course, all children are really different and the way that they learn is also very different. So we know that around this age, we see some children start to begin to experience some academic difficulties in school, maybe with some basic reading skills. For instance, learning letters and numbers and memorizing those things. Sometimes we see children in this grade range, one day or 1 week, they'll be able to recite information and recite the things that you told them and that they learned. And then you might see that they quickly forget or seem to forget, I should say, that same information when you ask them to do it again later on. So this is around the age when we start to see and we get some referrals into our clinic of children with some learning differences. So it's really important to start to pay attention. And as a parent, you might start to pick up on some of those. If you have a child and you're starting to work with them a lot at home, you might see some of those learning challenges emerge a little bit more during this age range and this grade range, especially since you're working with them often during this really unprecedented time. So parents are really the ones on the front lines right now, especially with learning and teaching. So you might just start to pick up on some of those things as you continue to work with your child. So if there are things that you're seeing as a parent and there's some things that are starting to concern you, perhaps, you can definitely continue to notice it and monitor it and just get a sense of what are some of those things. You should definitely reach out to your child's teacher and share your concerns and express those things if you are starting to see some differences. And what might actually be worth looking into, if you're seeing some learning challenges and these things seem to be persisting even with some supports, it might be worth actually looking into getting an evaluation done. And what's important for me to share with you right now is that our clinic at the Child Mind Institute is actually offering remote neuropsychological and educational evaluations for children as young as about 6 years old. Younger than 6, we're sort of holding off on that for now, but anything from 6 all the way through young adulthood, so even early 20s, we're able to actually conduct remote neuropsychological and educational evaluations right now, and we can really be able to give you a better sense of your child's learning profile and also some supports that might be helpful both during this time of coronavirus, remote learning, and also things that can be helpful for when school gets back. And we know that school will return at a point, and obviously that's going to look different for different states and different districts across the country, but we know that kids will eventually get back to school and to learning. And so right now might be a good time to get an evaluation or start to consider it, since we know that this can help set your children up for success in the future. So those are just some things. If you're a parent and you're starting to become a little concerned about some aspects of your child's learning while you're working with them at home, just some important things to keep in mind. I'm going to talk a little bit also about what are some other things that you can do as parents to really support your child's learning during this time, especially because there's a lot going on. And I know parents right now, especially parents that are working jobs and also trying to support your child's learning right now is such a difficult time. And so if I could provide some strategies and things that could be helpful, that might be able to ease your burden a little bit. So some strategies and ways to support your child's learning during this time. One of the first things that is important to keep in mind is trying to plan ahead. So you don't need to really adhere to rigid schedules, but it could just be important to plan out the day's activities in advance, even if you're just making a couple notes the night before. I think planning ahead gives children the expectation of what's going to happen, which can ease their anxiety and actually make them more available for learning if they know exactly what they need to do. And also, as a parent, it can help sort of reduce your own anxiety, of course, too, if you know this is what we're going to do in advance and this is how the day is going to look. So planning ahead is helpful, and I'm not saying it needs to be like super rigid and everything needs to be down to the minute. That's just not realistic. And I think being realistic and reasonable is important too. But just creating a general plan can be really helpful. And if you're a parent who needs a little bit more of the details and you think that's helpful and you see it's helpful, then go for it, right? You have to do what really works for you right now. I think another important thing to keep in mind is collaboration with teachers. So obviously right now we're in really a suboptimal learning environment. This is just not the type of learning environment that's effective for children to learn, but we have to make do with what's out there, and given the current situation, we have to be flexible and we have to try and adapt our approaches. So working with teachers who are also trying to figure this all out and trying to do their best and trying to adapt and create a flexible curriculum can be really helpful during this time. I think personally, collaborating with teachers also gives you a sense that you're not alone in this process and that you have another member of the team and your child's learning to be able to fall back on, who can also try and support you. And that's not to say teachers, I totally understand you have a lot of stuff going on your own, and you don't need to be the saving grace, obviously, completely. But I think working together and collaborating and sort of having a good balance can be really, really effective during this time. So if you're a parent, don't hesitate to reach out to your child's teacher and try and figure out what works best for remote learning during this time. Obviously, every child's different and their learning needs are going to be different, but having that collaborative problem-solving type of model can be really helpful. Another great tip that can be really important to keep in mind is remembering as parents how powerful your attention can be. With young kids, we know that many parents will need to sit next to or across from their children for some of the school day. Focusing your attention on their learning efforts will actually help them stay focused and involved, and trying to continue to alternate appealing and exciting work with things that are not so interesting or not as appealing can also help them overcome some frustration. So it's really important not only to focus your attention and support your child's learning and give them a lot of that reinforcement and praise for when they are sitting still and they're focused, but also trying to alternate a little bit from things that they enjoy to things that might be a little more challenging for them can also help maintain their attention. I've been on the Facebook Live a couple of times now talking about developing reading habits and what good reading habits look like with your children. Obviously, reading is like this crucial thing, especially at this grade range. And so one of the things that I've talked about a lot is actually creating a really nice, safe, and comfortable reading environment for your children. That in itself promotes a lot of great skills. If you're co-reading with your child or reading out loud to your child, even for 15 or 20 minutes a day, that can be a really nice way to not only anchor their attention, but also provide them really with like something warm and enjoyable for them to look forward to while they continue to pick up on new vocabulary words and just have your attention. So I think creating some nice spaces for learning that are not so demanding can also be super helpful. I'd also recommend setting some realistic expectations, right? And that's something that as a team here at the Child Mind Institute, we've been talking a lot about is setting reasonable expectations for yourself and also for your children as well. It is just such a difficult time right now, an unprecedented time, and so trying to set these realistic expectations becomes even more crucial than before. We know that's going to be really hard for children, especially the young kiddos, to be able to sit still and focus and engage their attention for multiple consecutive hours of the day. So what we want to see is more learning in remote bursts. So if your child's even able to pay attention for 20, 30 minutes at a time and do some learning and they're being reinforced and you're giving them a lot of positive attention and good feedback during those bursts of learning, that's great. But it's going to be hard for a child, obviously, especially at this age, to focus for just long extended periods, especially on a screen where we're missing some of that tactile input, and we're also, it's just not the way that we're used to learning. And so with little children, we want to create a learning environment that's exciting as possible, given what's in front of us right now. But just knowing that it might be hard for a child to sit still and engage for a long period is, I think, important, because then if you keep your expectations to that, it lessens maybe the frustration you might have with them if they get up and they start moving around a bit. I think also being creative right now is really something that is something to keep in mind and to think about. There are definitely plenty of opportunities for kids to learn and develop new skills outside of traditional schoolwork. Helping with chores, for example, can provide great opportunities for actually developing these self-regulatory skills and organizational skills and sort of these mental skills that are really important for also academic development. Things like cooking with your child, going over recipes together, those things are important, and you can really build in learning opportunities outside of just traditional instruction and screen time. So I think just thinking a little bit outside the box about other types of ways that your child can learn that's not just reading, writing, math, or there's peer instruction can be really helpful. And of course, we got to keep in mind that unstructured time is also really important for children, right? Especially during this age when their creativity and imagination, we want to bolster those skills. And so their days don't need to always be structured, and actually allowing some unstructured time is a really great way to support your child's learning as well. And then finally, another great thing to keep in mind is just maintaining social bonds. Again, kids from this age learn so much from the peer interactions and things happening around them. So being able to set up online play dates or drawing pictures to send to friends and other types of social activities can be just as important as traditional academic work. So even within traditional academic work, we want to make it try and make it as positive and supportive and engaging as possible, but also think about that outside of traditional academic work, and involving your child in some of those experiences can really help their learning as well. So I'm going to take a quick step back and reintroduce myself. So my name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute. Thank you so much for coming on this afternoon and tuning in. Today we're talking about how to support children in grades kindergarten through second grade with remote learning. And we're also answering your questions about remote learning and parenting during the coronavirus right now live. So if you have any questions, things that are coming up as I'm talking, or just things you want to know more about and you haven't found the right resource, or they're just things that you wish you could get some more input on from a professional, definitely leave your questions and comments in the chat, and I'll be able to answer those for you right here on the spot. So some questions that I've actually been getting as a clinical neuropsychologist here is, what is the best type of schedule for students in grades kindergarten through second grade? And really, and beyond just kindergarten through second grade, right? Like, I've been getting questions about kids in older grades as well. What's the best schedule? And I think that's really hard to answer because there's really no right answer. It really depends on realistically what you and your family can manage to meet your child's needs. With that said, though, it is important to keep in mind that children at different age ranges benefit from different types of structure, and children in this grade range and this age range really benefit a lot from having really quite more structure than kids at the older end of development. So it's as much as you can, it's really important to structure the day at home, even if it's a list of activities that your child can actually choose from. Each of the activities that you build into your schedule should last roughly about 15 to 25 minutes. And again, these are not strict guidelines that you have to follow. These are not things that you have to adhere to perfectly, but they just give sort of a sense of the time range and the framework for setting up activities. So ideally, each activity should last about 15 to 25 minutes, though if you do see that your child does have trouble focusing for more than 15 minutes, set that expectation, recognize that, and then work for shorter time frames, and then maybe you can gradually build it up to longer time frames with some reinforcement and some positive feedback when they are able to pay attention for that 15 minutes, and then that 25 minutes, and then that 25 minute, and then so on and so forth, right? Seated academic work, right, is definitely part of the day, but if you can, try and incorporate some physical activities as well, like jumping jacks while answering math problems. You can do a scavenger hunt for flashcards with short rhyming words. You can knock down bowling pins that have post-its with sight words on them as a reading exercise. So there are a lot of different things that you can do also to incorporate movement into traditional academic work, and I think trying to do that can be really beneficial for your children's energy levels as well and their attention. So a simulated school day at home, obviously it's going to look different for every family, and it really is about making sure to do what works best for you. But a sample sort of a simulated school day might look something like this. You might have a morning meeting where you review the day, the date, and the activities of the day. Then for a little bit, you could do a seated academic activity. Follow that up with a brief transition. You can do some more academic work, either seated or physical activity. Then I'd say probably in that early morning period, after a few of these things, you can incorporate some break time and snacks. Get back into academics after that. Then you can take a lunch break with a recess period, and that recess period can look very different, right? But really trying to think about having children get some physical activity, run around, maybe some unstructured time could be really helpful. And then peppering in some more academic activities can be helpful, and then you can end the day. But I think overall, trying to think about sort of that academic activity, maybe some breaks or unstructured time, academic activity, breaks, and structured time. Setting up a schedule like that can be really effective to keep your child's engagement. So we got a question coming in from one of our viewers, Kimberly. Thank you so much for asking and reaching out to us today on Facebook Live. So Kimberly asks, how can I best support my gifted and talented student with self-regulation and engagement at home? Awesome question, Kimberly. Thank you so much. So I love to talk about these students. I think they are so special. Our gifted and talented students, we have to recognize their learning needs as well. A lot of kids who are gifted and talented, they are going to be exceptional in so many ways, cognitively and academically. And we need to also, though, think about their other skills like self-regulation and also social and emotional functioning, because some kids that are gifted and talented but might have some more challenges with those things, we want to be able to try and even that out for them and support their areas that require growth. So I think for kids that are gifted and talented who need some of that self-regulation support and engagement, I think one of the things that you want to think about as far as academics is maybe trying to provide some accelerated work if they can handle it in the subjects that they're really great at. And that can actually engage them by giving them stuff that they're really interested in and things that go beyond the normal traditional curriculum. And that's to say if they're not already getting that from school. So if they are getting some accelerated work, that's great. But if you feel like you want to supplement it with some other activities, I definitely encourage that. Our team at the Child Mind Institute actually developed this great learning resource for families where we actually have a number of different websites and a number of different resources to support learning right now, remote learning. So we'll post that link in there for you guys so that you can access that. Some resources off the top of my head, though, like Johns Hopkins has a scholars program you can look into that provides some additional gifted activities. The Davidson Institute is another group that provides some gifted activities. So I think thinking about some of those accelerated programming could be helpful. And then as far as the self-regulation piece, I think there's a lot of great things that you can do. To support self-regulation, we want to make sure that kids are being provided with a lot of positive reinforcement for when they're doing the things that you want them to do, whether that's, doing chores, paying attention to an assignment, listening to your directions, following directions, and you want to catch them in those moments when they're doing the things that you want them to do as soon as possible. And what we know is that in itself, providing positive praise in the moment for your child to do the things that you expect or that you want them to do actually helps build up their self-regulation skills. And we know that that's a really helpful way for kids to learn from their environment, and also realize that they can do things independently on their own. But really trying to catch those moments when they are paying attention, when they are doing the things that you want them to do is really important. For kids with self-regulation issues, we also want to try and provide as much structure as possible and also give them a lot of routine, notice in advance of what the routines are for the day. That can help quell their anxiety a little bit. We also can think about providing some organizational routines for helping them manage their school supplies and helping them manage time. And we also want to think about the emotion regulation piece too with these kids. And I think for that, we can think about building up coping skills, teaching them coping skills, reinforcing those coping skills for when they're getting frustrated or angry or upset. We know those are great tools for self-regulation as well. One of my favorite resources for helping kids with self-regulation is a book called, and I think, Kimberly, this would be a great resource for your child, would be Smart But Scattered. And that book can be found online on Amazon. I think it's like $10. And it's a great resource that provides a list of different activities and things that you can do at home to support your child's self-regulation skills. We often call these executive function skills. So that book, again, is called Smart But Scattered, and could be a really great resource for you to have during this time. So thank you so much for your question. I'm going to take another question from Jelena here. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon and reaching out and asking your question. So Jelena asks, what's the best way to develop interest in a 5-year-old who just started reading but isn't that keen to read? Jelena, thank you so much for that question. So one of my personal sort of passions and things that I'm really interested in is how do we develop good reading habits for kids early on? And so for children who are young at this age, who are just learning sort of those, or in that basic stages of reading, which involves what we call print awareness, which is basically just being aware that books contain written communication messages, that books have a front cover and a back cover, that they contain words and pictures, and that we learn from books, that they have to be held a certain way actually for us to read the books. That's print awareness, and that's something that's developing around 4 to 5 years old. And another skill that's really developing during this age that supports reading is something called phonological awareness, which is how children and individuals are aware of the sounds within language. And we know those skills are important for learning how to sound out words and break down new words. So for 5-year-old children, those are some early things that they're learning right now. They might be doing some letter identification, some simple word identification as well. So the best way to develop some reading skills for this age group is definitely to work on some of those phonological awareness skills. And there's a number of games and activities and things that you can do for that. Readingrockets.org is one of my favorite websites that has a lot of resources for developing some of those phonological skills. For also another important thing that you can do to help out with your child right now to get them interested in reading is really setting aside some time every single day, even if it's for 15 or 20 minutes only, and creating a really warm, comfortable, safe, enjoyable, engaging environment where they can choose books that they want to read or they want to hear you read to them. And reading with your child every single day, even for 15 to 20 minutes, we know that bolsters their vocabulary development. Children that get read to on a daily basis, we see that their ability to learn language and learn vocabulary just skyrockets. And so really trying to put aside, if you have the time, 15 to 20 minutes every single day. And I know it's so tough right now for so many families to find that time, especially working parents. But if you can, that's a really great way. And really, you want to make reading at this age something fun and enjoyable and engaging, because there's an emotional aspect to reading as well, right? Where we want kids to feel motivated. We want kids to feel like they're getting something out of it. And we want them to become lifelong readers. So making it really comfortable, warm, engaging is really, at this age, something you can do in addition to working on those early language skills, that phonological awareness, and really just having them access and touch and manipulate books. Surrounding them with books is a really great thing to do. And I think we know that learning through books and holding books can be even a much more effective route to reading and understanding language than just from a screen, right? So really trying to incorporate that as much as possible throughout the day can be really helpful. So thank you so much for your question, Jelena. I hope that was helpful for you. And we only have about 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to do a wrap up here. My name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in this afternoon and is listening from around the country and across the world. We so appreciate you tuning in. We are here for you right now during this difficult time to be able to provide you with resources to support your child and to support your family at home. If you visit our website, childmind.org/coronavirus, you'll find a lot of those resources on our website that have tips on how to manage anxiety and disruptive behavior and remote learning. I believe that our amazing marketing team is going to be sending in some links to some remote learning resources in the comments, so check those out. And please continue to tune in every afternoon at 4:30 for one of our experts who's going to be discussing how do we parent during this very difficult time. Again, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in this afternoon. I look forward to coming back and speaking to you again soon. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. And thank you so much to all of our frontline workers who are out there doing amazing work, and all the parents and teachers who are so involved in supporting their children. Thank you so much. It was great speaking to you, and I look forward to being back here again soon.